Hello folks, Why Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful summer afternoon. The name of this video is called The Why Guy Exposes Church Bullies. I like to share a personal experience of what church bullies look like. And then I want to share a general term from what I call church bullies is what this outfit called Cult Watch, what they call a cult. To me, a Why Guy interpretation of church bully defines a church cult. Okay? Because it isn't love. We will break you. We have ways of making you talk. Yes, I stole that line from an old World War II movie when quoting a Nazi SS officer. Okay? Nowadays it's called a breaking session. All right, you can Google that, breaking session. Spelled the same way as it sounds. And it's very similar to how law enforcement interrogates people. You know, church leadership has been using this technique for years. Using shame as a tool. It happens when one or two or more church members and leaders attack the character of another person, sometimes for hours on end. All right? Some church members will not stop these sessions until their victim starts crying. Thus the term broken. All right? Were you with me? As a real life example of one such session, okay, from yours truly, while sitting in a pastor's office, you know, along with his supposed elders, if you want to call them that, his yes men, his brown nosers, okay? My wife began weeping while telling them that a church should be a safe place, a refuge. She said that she was so tired of seeing her husband, meaning me, getting emotionally beat up every time he came into the building. Okay, she wasn't exaggerating. Get their amazing answer. Get this amazing answer that they gave her for the response they gave her, okay? They proceeded to tell her that the perception that I give off, okay, that I personally give off to people is my responsibility. And if I'm going to act like a fool, then I should be treated like one. You know, I've always had the attitude of kind of jocularity and kind of a carefree and that kind of an attitude. Well, for me, being a little more carefree and being myself and being transparent and being honest, that was foolishness to them. Okay? Well, you know, you could really feel the love in that room, right? I mean that sarcastically. Well, gladly, we left that church shortly thereafter, and that's when the big guns of character assassination came out. In other words, the masks came off. Their loving masks came off. You know, living in a small community didn't help matters at all because horrible things were being said about us, my wife and I, behind our backs. Until one such person with a pair of balls let us in on the slander that was being said. Mostly from the pastor. Okay? This was punishment for leaving his church. He made it clear to everyone that we knew to stay clear of us. Why? Because I was rebellious and divisive. Those are his words, not mine, okay? And that my wife used flowery words to deceive people. For you who know my wife, you know that that's the most bogus thing you've ever heard. My wife doesn't have a deceptive bone in her body. Ooh, I wanted to strangle that guy. Believe me, I did. Okay? Anyway, this slander was after 5 years of leading praise and worship in that church and being totally committed. And yet none of these horrible things that we supposedly did was ever mentioned at that time. All right, you with me? I called that pastor. I wanted to hold him accountable for what he said. So I called him and I asked him to give me some examples of how I was divisive or rebellious. Either one. Get this answer. Quote, "Remember when we took the youth to Jesus Northwest? In the morning devotion, I asked Dustin to share, and you shared as well. You came between Dustin and I, and that makes you divisive." Close quote. Instead of blurting out that he was a dumb shit, which is what I felt, got yellow jackets, speaking of dumb shits, I then asked how I was rebellious. Quote, "Remember another occasion when we had the youth at your house? While the two of us were privately talking, you mentioned how motorcycles should have a different speed limit because there's not as much weight to them and they can maneuver faster. And you thought that motorcycles should be able to go faster. Well, that proves you're rebellious." Close quote. What a total idiot. Were we members of a cult that preached Jesus? Looking back, you bet your rear end we were. But we didn't know it at the time, else I wouldn't have hung out for 5 whole stinking years. Cults know that if they can control your relationship with others, then they can control you. And this was the case that our ex-pastor tried to pull. Whether we like it or not, we are profoundly affected by those around us. So, let's get back on topic of what a cult is. When you first go to a cult, or a church, sometimes it's one and the same, they will use love bombing, where they act as if they totally accept you, and it seems as if you have instant friends, just like that. Sometimes they follow up with promoting a home group that you can lock into. Does any of this sound familiar? Now, I'm not saying all churches are like this, so don't you run with that, okay? I'm not saying that. I'm just giving you a heads up on what some churches are like, and watch out for them and get that crap out of there, all right? So anyway, where was I? Sometimes, well, at first, it seems wonderful. And besides, how could such a loving group be wrong, right? But you soon learn that if you ever disagree with them or ever leave the cult, church, then you will lose most of your new friends. This unspoken threat influences your actions in the cult. Things that normally would have made you complain will pass by silently because you don't want to be ostracized. Like in an unhealthy relationship, love is turned on and off for controlling purposes. That's gross, isn't it? Anyway, those who control the information controls the person. That's just how it works. So why do you think the Roman government, which was combined with the church at the time, published the Latin Vulgate in the first place? It was for control. In my opinion, it was published by a bunch of religious bullies. In a mind control cult, any information from outside the cult is considered evil, especially if it's opposing the cult. In other words, any information from outside the ancient Latin church was considered evil, especially if it opposed the church in any way. Okay? They tortured and burned people at the stake for such offenses as I'm just mentioning. And it was horrible. The Spanish Inquisition, oh my gosh. Anyway, from Cult Watch, here's a quote. If you are instructed by a group not to read information critical of the group, then that is a sign of a cult, close quote. Well, folks, I hate to say it, but I've been in numerous churches where they'll tell you from the pulpit not to read a certain book or watch a particular movie. All because it doesn't go along with their particular teaching. Need I say more about that? I think most of my viewers relate with that. In our present day, we have numerous Bible versions that mostly came from or was heavily influenced by the Latin Vulgate. So if you offer a version of Scripture that contradicts the Latin Vulgate, the Latin Vulgated, that's not the right way to put it, the Latin Vulgate influenced Bibles, then Christians are told not to read it or believe it. By using this standard, the standard I just mentioned, most of our Christian family and friends are members of a cult. Have you noticed that only information, meaning Bibles, endorsed by the cult, or the church in this case, is considered true? A cult will label any information against it as persecution or apostate literature, and will expel you from their church if you're caught with it or promoting such things, okay? Cult pastors train their members to instantly destroy any critical information given to them, and to not even entertain the thought that the information could be possibly true. You know, you'll never discover any of my books. I've written 3 books. In Defense of God's Love, here's your infomercial. In Defense of God's Love was the first one. And then Is God Bipolar was the second one. And the third one is No Love, No Fear, N-O, Love, N-O, K-N-O-W, Fear, and No Love, No Fear, K-N-O-W, Love, and then N-O, Fear. I said that backwards, but anyway, no love, no fear, no love, no fear. All right, with no spelled differently. Anyway, you won't find any of my books in any church library. Common sense tells us that a person who does not consider all information may make an unbalanced decision. And to combat that, I offer options that are contrary to doctrines of men. That's what I'm doing. Cultish practices filter contradictory information available by trying to discredit it, not on the basis of how true it may or may not be, but rather on the basis of how it does not support the party line. You know, this is a common control method used throughout history in both governments and religions. You know, there are many common practices that both cults and churches use. And I'm sure there's more than what I'm about to share, but from my personal experience, here's a list of 15 examples that may vary from cult to cult or church to church, whatever the case may be, of things that they both do. Now, these are common, I wrote these down, common denominators. One, consciously or not, they both take advantage of times where you might be vulnerable. Yeah. Okay. Two, so much is based on assumed experiences of others, often those who are long dead, similar to those who wrote Scripture, rather than applying common sense and critical thinking. Common denominator number 3 of a cult and a church, the smile might only be skin deep as they offer a fake friendship. I think that's far and few in between personally, but that's one of those things that was written in Cult Watch. Okay. 4, end of the world scenario. Oh yeah, I cut my teeth on all the Left Behind books and videos, and oh man, I was so into that. 5, pressure to do crazy things. Okay, a rhetorical question. When was the last time that you cast demons out of a car like I used to? Okay. 6, they offer secret knowledge pertaining to truth that very few know about. Ooh. 7, usually they both have a single charismatic leader or a pastor that's not accountable to anyone. 8, instant friends. Bink. 9, both have a habit of telling you who you can or cannot talk to or associate with. That's disgusting. 10, they hide what they teach. And here's an example that I came up with. Most church leaders believe in hell, but only a small percentage ever talk about it. You know what it's at? 11, they claim to operate in love, so why go anywhere else? This is common denominator between cults and our mainstream churches. 12, hyped meetings. They try to get you in as many meetings as possible. Oh yeah, Sunday morning or Saturday morning if you're a Sabbath person. Sunday morning, Saturday morning, Sunday night, Saturday night. Don't forget midweek, Wednesday night. 13, asking for money to enlarge the church or cult. That's definitely a common denominator with everybody, I guess, not just churches and cults. 14, some cults and church members travel door to door during times when women are home alone. Albeit sexist, it's assumed that women are easier to recruit, and once they have the woman, then it will be easier to snare the husband or partner. That was a quote from Cult Watch. 15, implying that if it's not a sacrifice on your part, usually meaning financial, I'm assuming, then you lack integrity and sincerity. Those are the 15 things that I came up with from what I read and from my personal experiences and things like that. So in closing this video, this is primarily why grace is shunned in a lot of churches. Because if you didn't earn it somehow, then you won't appreciate it. That's the carnal knowledge that is put into people, okay? That's carnal thinking. Well, that definition, of course, is extremely stupid. That's the best way to put it. It's a stupid reason. Because plenty of people, like myself, are able to appreciate things which we didn't pay for. You know, these same hypocritical bullies are more than willing to receive a birthday present and appreciate it, right? Look me up on Facebook under a group called the Y Guy Group. And I have a private name. I don't even feel like getting into that. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, if you'd like, and if you can leave a comment, and if it's in rebuttal to what I've shared here, make sure it's polite so I won't have to delete it. And scroll down to the Show Me More sections. I would like to share a link where those 3 books that I mentioned in this video, where I have them on Amazon. Check them out. You can read a few pages for free. And let me see what else. I'm going to leave 3 other links, and you'll read those when you get down there, where you can support this channel in different ways. Thank you so much for viewing.